Hello all, a Knife's Tale here, bringing you another knife review, and today we're going to be looking at the Ochs Werx Solarstorm EDX, made by, I believe, Reate. And that's a mouthful. This is a pretty premium knife, I would say. It's definitely not a budget knife. This knife is in titanium. And I just completely lost my train of thought. That's weird. Titanium with carbon fiber inlays in M390 steel. It is a flipper only on bearings. And it is a frame lock. Should be mentioned. Let's jump into specifications if I can find the ever uncooperative tape measure. So 3 3/8, so 3.4-ish blade. 7 5/8 overall, almost on the dot, so 7.65-ish. And the handle is 4 1/4. Not particularly big, not particularly cumbersome. Let's get this stuff out of the way. I'm getting too much crap on my table. Let's make a quick knife comparison to our... Hopefully that... Yeah. To our small knife comparison knife, the CVV Elementum, and our full-size, the CVV Conspirator. And as you can see, this thing does lean a little bit closer to the Conspirator, but it's pretty well in between. It's pretty optimal size for what I would consider a EDC knife. It's not too small, it's not really too big, it's not gonna start raising too many eyebrows. I mean, the design is interesting, and maybe some people would consider it aggressive. I don't. But yeah, it's a pretty small knife with a decent amount of blade, though. Folded up, it's not really that much bigger than the CVV Elementum, which is pretty impressive, and it is not tall in the slightest. At its highest, it's still probably thinner, not as tall as the Elementum. The one difference is it is thick. Probably about as thick as the... I mean, it's contoured, first of all. Is that contouring? Yeah. It does have a ridge that runs along the thing, but it is slightly contoured, I'd say. I'd call that contoured. What is that on the back of that knife? Oh, it is literally nothing. And the reason for it being so thick, I should say, is probably because it's so thin in the other dimensions. Keeping it a little thicker in the hand will increase the overall comfort, because you just start getting too thin, skinny, and small, and it just starts getting unpleasant. Some companies do not seem to realize this. Let's get weight. 3 ounces. Almost on the dot. So you're actually getting really good ratios here. I mean, this is a titanium knife with no internal milling. So it's this weight reduction and just the natural size of this knife, and you're still getting more than 1 ounce an inch. So this thing is really good for the ratios and minimalist kind of people. Let's check handle thickness. Yeah, it's like 0.005 more than the Conspirator, so it's pretty much the same. It's just over half an inch. Blade stock on this knife is Okay, what is the blade stock on this knife? Why is that not cooperating? $127,000s? 128,000s ish. I feel like they were shooting maybe for 125. Yeah, 127,000s. Pretty consistently. Now, here's where this knife should pretty well shine. Yeah, that is behind the edge thickness of about 11 thousandths. It is very thin behind the edge. It has a hollow grind, and you realize that quickly when you use this thing. Can you get the hollow grind? Not very well. This knife makes it a little bit hard. But it is hollow grind, and it is thin as heck behind the edge. Let's check hardware. T8. Which I'm pretty sure will work on this pivot. T8. Yes, it will. I have a sinking suspicion that well, color me impressed. These are T8s. Everything on this knife is T8. Ooh. I actually thought those were T6s. I like that. This knife is full T8 construction. Excellent job. Excellent decision there. Am I missing something? I feel like I'm forgetting something. No, I guess not. This knife is on bearings. I should mention that, I guess. And no, there's no play. Not at all. It's quite smooth. It's not drop shut. But it is quite smooth. Honestly, it looks like there might be a little bit of gunk in that pivot, so I might actually have to clean that out a bit to really get this thing to shine. It's Reate. It's going to be smooth. The execution on the inlays is just wonderful. This is one of the truly only knives that I have that I would be hard-pressed to really say I feel those inlays. They're basically non-existent, the transition there. I mean, you can feel it here, but that's the lock bar. Yeah, this is one of the better knives, even from Reate. Like, I can usually still feel their transitions a bit. Not on this one. As you can see, this is a very snappy sort of knife. Though there is something to be said about the flipper tab, which we will get to after we finish off with some of these specs. Well, I guess this isn't really a spec area. I don't know what this is. This is more of a... I guess the pros and cons area mixed with specs. Who knows? Stop pin is right here. It doesn't hit behind the edge. Doesn't cause a problem. You would be able to cut in a sharpening choil. The plunge grind on this knife is very hard to see because of this very heavy belt satin, which is actually quite attractive looking. But it makes it very hard to figure out where that plunge grind is. I want to say that the plunge grind actually ends about here on this knife. I kind of wish they had pulled it all the way back and just went all the way into the hollow grind, but leading all the way into the hollow grind. But yeah, I'd say it's about here. The blade does thicken out a little bit faster than some hollow grinds because it doesn't have a lot of room, but yeah, I think it's about here. It's not a problem. You can definitely cut in a sharpening choil. You're probably not going to hit it for the first couple sharpenings. So that's good. And it makes for a finger choil, which on even a small knife like this is surprisingly roomy, let's just say. I also want to mention that, yeah, that knife it's not the most aggressive, but it is super sharp. It doesn't have the most bite out of the box, but it is definitely a sharp knife coming right out. The ergos on this knife are also pretty darn good. Yes, you feel the clip. It's not something you can avoid when the knife is so narrow. Or whatever. Thin, tall, whatever. But it's not uncomfortable whatsoever. Up here, it almost disappears completely. And I can actually get a good full grip on both the standard and the forward grip. And I have paint on my finger right there. Yeah. It's pretty comfortable in hand. And the clip is a nice, attractive milled clip with a continuous rise. A bit strong on the retention, but not bad. And it works pretty well in and out of the pocket. There is a lanyard hole way at the back. I don't really think it's prioritized over the pocket clip, but maybe a tiny bit. They might be able to push it back a little bit. But then again, if you start pushing it back into this skinny area, that might actually make it uncomfortable in the hand. Who knows? It may be purposeful and deliberately designed that way. As you can see, there is also some very attractive milling on this blasted stonewash kind of handle that adds to the overall aesthetic, which is pretty consistent throughout the knife. It's got a very good aesthetic. I will say that I wish there was a little bit more lock bar access. Maybe just cut this back a tiny hair or leave this out a tiny hair. It's not bad. I can still get it coming from the side. Don't misunderstand me. It's about as minimal lock bar access while still being acceptable as I'm sort of going to say. Some knives are just super tight. This one it's approaching it. But it's not bad. Oh, and there's a lock bar insert, which is always nice. So, the main thing I want to talk about on this knife is this flipper tab. I don't like this flipper tab. It is small, and you want to push in here, but that is also where the sort of flipper tab peaks, and it's pretty uncomfortable. You basically end up really getting pushed into doing the light switch. And yeah, okay, the light switch works perfectly fine every time. It's just fine. And as you can see, it will swing down, but it has decent lock bar tension, so that's what's making it more of a tighter shake shot. I suppose you could probably adjust that by pulling the lock bar back a little bit, but it doesn't bother me. What does bother me is the flipper tab, like I said. I feel like this flipper tab was almost designed backwards. I get the curve, because that's where you're sitting. But the pad of this angle should kind of have been there, I think. As it is, this jimping does nothing. You can't push button this. Or if you do, you have to do it up here on this part of it where you're jimping, you're not coming in contact with the jimping, and it is quite uncomfortable. This is light switch only. So, flipper tab is a big miss for me. It just doesn't work. And honestly, if the flipper tab followed this like sort of design language with these curving... Why is it... I just noticed the camera's not focusing for some reason. If it followed the line and went out like that and just followed this straight, I don't know. It's a strange decision on the flipper tab. It's a miss on what is otherwise really an extremely nice knife. The other miss is the billboard. Ochs Werx EDX. Why? I mean, I get that's Eric Ochs' logo. But couldn't we just have, like, the symbol there pushed into the corner? Or even just the symbol and the name Ochs pushed into the corner. I mean, you have such a striking design that's sort of futuristic, and then you have all of that on it, which is kind of weird, because it doesn't fit with the aesthetic of the rest of the knife again. So overall, we have a knife that is really nice, but has two strange decisions. I should mention that this is sort of a modified sheep's foot reverse Tonto. Very utilitarian blade. Very good, especially with this hollow grind. Yeah, it's not the tallest blade, but this thing cuts pretty readily. And she is centered. So, a couple strange decisions. Like, I think even knocking down the back end of this clip would be nice. Or just or making it round off, kind of. It feels like the design was so close to being almost perfect and wonderful. And we stumbled just a tiny bit. Overall, I still like the knife quite a bit, though. It's a cool knife. It's a good-looking design. And it's executed very, very well. Now, price. The base model of this with my card inlays I think is $340. The base carbon fiber is $350, and I think this carbon fiber was around $360. For a Reate made knife, which top-end Chinese manufacturer, yes, the M390 might be a little bit soft, but Reate's pretty good about theirs. It's probably going to err on that end of 60 to 61 more consistently than it would anything lower than that, which is reasonably acceptable. It's not the 62 that I would like to see consistent M390, but it's not bad, especially for Chinese manufacturing. This thing is extremely, extremely well finished and precise, and has nice milling on it. This is texture. It is a collaboration knife, so I mean, Eric Ochs had them OEM this knife for him, so that automatically adds price. I would say that this knife is probably worth the money. It is a very recommendable if you want this, if you like the aesthetic and you want this sort of lighter duty gentlemanly knife. It does its job very, very well. I will say that if you're looking for a knife that is extremely easy to actuate, this is not it. That point, heavy detent, kind of makes it awkward. But not bad. It's definitely worth the $350 they're asking, I think. Just for the quality and what you're getting. But I don't think this knife is going to work for everybody. And I think that might be what's holding it back. I'd actually like to see a tiny bit larger version with those slight changes to the plunge being pulled back here, so we're really deep hollow grind, the branding, the tiny bit of flipper tab adjustment, and the slight clip shape change, just having a little more rounded contouredness nature to it. You do that, and you make this knife, I don't know, instead of the 7 5/8, you make it the full 8-inch. Go from here to up here. With equal amounts additional blade and handle. If you can get that coming in the same price or 10 or 20 bucks more, this would be a knockout. It's really good as it is, but they're so close to being something crazy great here. But it has performed well for me, so that's pretty much all I have to say about it. What are your thoughts on this one? It's a good looking knife. But I feel there's just that hint of potential that was missed. Yeah. I like it, and if you like it, and you're looking for something gentlemanly, yeah, it's still a recommendable knife, and it's still pretty reasonably priced for what you're getting. Do with that information what you will. And that's where we're going to stop for here today. So, thanks for watching if you did. Like and subscribe maybe if you feel like it. If you can hear the that is a dog. He apparently wants something, so I'm going to be going. Bye-bye now.